Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Kelly. I'm the president of Florida Atlantic University, and I want to welcome you to probably one of the closest universities to the ocean. So you're at the right place. We are actually 1.8 miles from here to the Atlantic Ocean in that direction. We're really delighted to have the EPA with us here today. And with us, we have Administrator Wheeler, Mary Neumayr, Mark Menezes, Raton Timothy Gallaudet, Mike Witt, Congressman Mast. Administrator Wheeler will give the closing remarks, and I'll give you some overview of the university real briefly. First of all, FAU was the first ocean engineering program in the United States. So we have a number of people, it's hard to breathe this thing. We have a number of people at the university who work in the ocean-related work, 113 miles between the northernmost campus and the southernmost campus. Terry Mincer is here. Terry, where are you? Terry is our oceans plastics expert, and Jim Sullivan. Jim is the director of our Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute. We are also the proud owners of the founders of 4Ocean. Many of you may have heard of 4Ocean. Andrew Cooper and Alex Schultz, who harvest plastic from the ocean. Both of them were selected to Forbes 30 Under 30. We are now in our 5th decade of working with marine science at FAU, and we have technology transfer partners on a number of different projects dealing with the environment, society, and economic outcomes. Federal funding is a key part of our research enterprise at FAU, and over the past 5 years, we've more than doubled our research expenditures at the university. We greatly appreciate the role of the EPA and all the federal agencies that work with us in collaboration. Our experts are trying to find solutions to some of the biggest challenges that we face today, including blue-green algae and related toxins, sea life conservation, and of course plastics and other pollutants that threaten our marine ecosystems. I want to thank the EPA for being here and introduce to you EPA Administrator Andrew Wheeler.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, distinguished colleagues and friends. I'd like to thank Florida Atlantic University for hosting us on this beautiful campus here in Boca Raton. Thank you again, Dr. Kelly, for your hospitality and the hospitality of the university. I'd like to thank Dr. Jim Sullivan and Dr. Tracy Mincer as well for being here. Thank you very much. Also to do just a quick shout out to somebody on my staff, Ali Rodriguez, who graduated from FAU. I think Ali is, hello Ali, welcome back to your campus. I also want to welcome Deputy Secretary Mark Menezes with the Department of Energy. He and I have traveled around a little bit together, and it's great to be with Mark as always. I'd like to welcome Mary Neumayr, Chairman of the Council on Environmental Quality. Rear Admiral Gallaudet, Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere and the Deputy Administrator at NOAA. Thank you for being here. Mike Witt with the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. And I especially want to thank Congressman Mast for being here today. Congressman, thank you very much for your service and for always supporting what we're trying to do at EPA and with the oceans. Thank you. It's great to see important stakeholders here for this announcement today. I want to thank everyone for sharing their time to discuss the important global challenge of marine litter in our shared oceans. As Administrator of the U.S. EPA, my agency is committed to addressing marine litter because it is one of Trump administration's top environmental priorities. Back in 2018, President Trump signed into law the Save Our Seas Act, which directed the U.S. to aggressively combat the growing problem of marine litter in our oceans, both domestically and abroad. Internationally, every year, billions of pounds of waste end up in our oceans. The estimates vary, but is likely between 11 and 28 billion pounds of waste annually, much of it land-based, that ends up harming marine life and coastal economies. Oceans are our shared resource. This makes it our collective responsibility to work together to tackle the problem. That's why I'm proud to announce today the publication of the U.S. strategy for addressing global issues of marine litter. This publication spells out in detail a holistic, nationwide approach to combating marine litter that can be replicated and adapted throughout the world. The most effective way to combat marine litter is to prevent the litter from entering the oceans in the first place. This means improving waste management and recycling globally. The U.S. is taking a leadership role in these areas. I am proud to be surrounded by some major supporters of this effort as I launch America's strategy to prevent and reduce marine litter. The strategy is based on 4 pillars that define the U.S. approach. Number 1, building capacity for waste and litter management systems. Number 2, incentivizing the global recycling market in partnership with the private sector. 3, promoting research and development for new solutions and technology. Hence why we're here today at a leading research university in these efforts. And number 4, promoting marine litter removal, including litter capture systems in seas, rivers, and inland waterways. The U.S. is committed to implementing groundbreaking programs and financing initiatives around the world that provide methods and tools to countries that are struggling with this problem. I recognize that the U.S. cannot solve the global issue alone. For this reason, this strategy highlights the importance of working with private sector and non-governmental organizations to fix the problem. EPA is addressing marine litter domestically and internationally through our Trash-Free Waters program. Domestically, we work with states, municipalities, and businesses to reduce litter, prevent trash from entering waterways, and capture trash that is already in our waters. We have over 50 partnership projects across the country with different levels of government and private sector NGOs. This year, EPA awarded over $7.8 million to 17 grantees along the Gulf of Mexico for projects that reduce the amount of litter in our waterways through waste prevention and removal. Earlier this month, I announced another $2.1 million through the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative Trash-Free Waters Grant Program, established under President Trump to address marine litter within the Great Lakes watershed. And we are adapting what we've learned through the Trash-Free Waters program, and we expanded it internationally to communities in Panama, Jamaica, and Peru. We are doing this in part through international technical exchanges between countries. At the beginning of this year, I traveled to Brazil to confer with government officials on waste management and marine litter issues. In fact, I spent an afternoon with Minister Salles of Brazil cleaning up a beach in Brazil to bring local attention to the issue. And in July, we followed up with a webinar where we shared U.S. approaches to address land-based sources of marine litter. The webinar had 62 people from Brazil's government in attendance, including officials from the Ministry of Environment, the National Health Foundation, the Brazilian National Water and Sanitation Agency, and the Brazilian Development Bank. We had planned an international environmental ministers meeting just to focus on marine waste in May of this year, but we had to postpone the event due to COVID-19. But we do plan on rescheduling the event next year. And thanks to a very strong response and the high quality of potential projects, an estimated an additional $3 million in Great Lakes Restoration Initiative money was recently redirected to the Trash-Free Waters program. And earlier this month, we announced an additional $600,000 distributed through 26 national estuary programs for locations to clean up marine litter and an additional $200,000 grant under the Trash-Free Waters program to the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians to purchase a litter trap to keep the litter from going into the Gulf of Mexico. These pilot projects have been so successful that President Trump's upcoming budget has requested over $7 million in additional funding to EPA to expand the trash-free waters both domestically and internationally. This funding would also allow EPA to expand the International Trash-Free Waters Program to countries in Southeast Asia, where the largest source of this pollution takes place. We know that 5 countries are responsible for over half of the plastic waste input into the oceans. Working collectively, we can solve it. The U.S. is also doing its part by having EPA lead efforts to improve the U.S. recycling system here in our country. We are doing this by keeping recyclable materials inside the economy and not floating down our waterways. On October 5th, EPA released a draft national recycling strategy that identifies strategic objectives and actions needed to create a stronger U.S. municipal solid waste recycling system. This strategy builds on EPA's 2019 National Framework for Advancing the U.S. Recycling System. I will be hosting our 3rd annual America Recycles Day Summit on November 17th, where I will announce America's first ever national recycling goals. I know many of you or your staff have participated in the previous summits. This will be a limited in-person event this year, and we are encouraging broader participation via a virtual platform. I'm also proud to announce that EPA is releasing the Solid Waste Management Guide for Developing Countries that provides best practices, information, and resources for decision makers. This is building on a lot of groundwork by Japan last year when they were the host of the G20 ministers meeting. What makes our guide unique is that it provides a comprehensive one-stop shop by combining a guide document with electronic links to more specific information on critical solid waste management topics. Lastly, I want to highlight the U.S. government's partnership with the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. This partnership is key to addressing marine litter, and we are happy to have USAID and representatives from the Alliance as part of this effort in today's announcement. One of the purposes of proper regulation by EPA is to allow innovation and invention that can improve environmental outcomes over time at less cost and in a faster manner than any other method of environmental regulation. Earlier this month, I had the opportunity to visit a new $100 million plastics recycling plant that's being built in Erie, Pennsylvania. That will be the world's largest plastics recycling plant when it's completed in 2022. Currently, only 7% of plastics entering landfills in the U.S. are recycled, but this plant will be able to turn 100% of waste plastics into valuable resources that can be sold profitably. This technology can revolutionize plastics recycling in ways that really should give us all hope for a future in which marine litter and plastic waste are both under control, both here in the U.S. as well as worldwide. Halting the growth and then reversing marine litter pollution is a battle worth fighting and one that we can win. I'm very pleased to say that over the last 3 years, the federal family has expanded their collaborative work on marine litter. In terms of policies and programs, we are more aligned and unified than ever before. I'm pleased to yield the floor to my esteemed federal colleagues to introduce themselves, share what their teams are doing, including any announcements related to new initiatives on marine litter. And first, I believe a few words from Chairman Neumayr from CEQ, followed by Deputy Secretary Menezes, and then Rear Admiral Gallaudet. Thank you all again for your interest and your attendance today. This is truly a collaborative effort, as you can see by the various organizations and federal family members represented here today. Thank you.
thank you for the introduction, and thank you to Florida Atlantic University for hosting us today. I first want to congratulate Administrator Wheeler and his counterparts at the State Department, the Department of Energy, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and the United States Agency for International Development for completing the United States federal strategy for addressing the global issue of marine litter, which outlines a strategy that can be replicated and adapted throughout the world. Every year, millions of metric tons of waste enters the world's oceans. This litter is due to myriad causes, including poor management of solid waste, insufficient infrastructure, littering, and dumping. As we seek to protect, manage, and balance America's vast marine resources, we must address this significant problem impacting the world's oceans and waterways. Under President Trump's leadership, the federal government has focused on taking action to prevent marine litter, including plastic waste, from entering our oceans. In 2018, as Administrator Wheeler said, President Trump signed the Save Our Seas Act, which enhanced the federal government's ability to reduce and prevent marine litter and debris. In his public signing, President Trump brought attention to those countries, including China, that are major contributors to marine litter in the United States and around the world. The U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement includes the first ever provisions in a trade agreement to take on the challenge of marine litter, and such provisions will be included in future trade agreements. The Council on Environmental Quality looks forward to continuing to work with the EPA, the State Department, the Department of Energy, USAID, and NOAA to implement this strategy. A hallmark of this administration has been prioritizing efficient and effective communication and coordination between federal agencies. The strategy announced today builds upon that cooperation. In June of 2018, President Trump signed an executive order that established an Ocean Policy Committee, which I am privileged to co-chair. A key responsibility of the committee is to facilitate coordination, consultation, and collaboration regarding ocean-related matters, including addressing marine litter, among federal, state, tribal, and local governments, marine industries, the ocean science and technology community, other ocean stakeholders, and foreign governments and international organizations. President Trump understands that to address complex environmental issues, including the international challenge of marine debris, it will take effective and efficient coordination across the federal government and with congressional, state, and local partners, stakeholders, and our partners across the globe. Working together, we can ensure American families have the products they need without adversely affecting our beautiful coastlines and marine ecosystems. CEQ looks forward to continuing to work with EPA and all of our partners to promote the health of our oceans. As the administration continues to advance the nation's economic, security, and environmental interests, once again, I want to thank Administrator Wheeler and the EPA for today's announcement.
I'd like to invite Deputy Secretary Menezes to the podium, please. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I, too, would like to join Administrator Wheeler in thanking Dr. Kelly for hosting us today and the distinguished professors that join us here today. I note that just recently this month, scientists at this university, in collaboration with a couple of other universities, released a study really focusing on the microbial habitat in our oceans and identifying a plastics substrates of microorganisms. So it's all fitting and proper that we actually gather here today, and I do appreciate your attendance and recognize the leading work that you all are doing on this very important topic. I'd like to also thank Administrator Wheeler and Chairman Neumayr for laying out the challenge of marine litter as well as the solutions that the Trump administration is offering. You know, speaking for Secretary Bruyette and our leadership team, I'm delighted to share with you what our Department of Energy is doing to address the challenge. And let me begin with the issue of plastic waste. You know, plastics, of course, are essential to modern life, and the production of plastic products involves thriving industries that support millions of American jobs, whether it's medical devices, packaging, furniture. We all have come to depend on these products for everyday life. And yet, as Chairman Neumayr pointed out, the disposal of these products into our oceans is a growing problem. Now, of course, some want to ban the use of plastics altogether, just as we know in the field of energy, some would like to solve global emissions concern by banning every fossil fuel. But in both cases, they're assuming we must sacrifice economic and material progress in order to be environmentally responsible. Well, we reject that notion and instead have chosen to embrace the power of American innovation, because it's through ingenuity and innovation we have chosen to address plastics disposal challenges head on. And that's why last November, the Department of Energy launched the Plastics Innovation Challenge. Through our national laboratories, our universities, and American industry, this program will develop new technologies to keep plastics from entering the ocean and to extract them, new methods to deconstruct existing plastic waste and upcycle it, and new plastics specifically designed to be recycled. Now, if you look on page 5 of the federal strategy to address marine litter, you will see, as the administrator pointed out, the top 10 polluters in these rivers in Asia and Africa that cause most of the problem of plastics in our oceans. And while the U.S. is not the driver of the world's marine plastic problem, we intend to drive the solution. And we fully intend to advance President Trump's broader mandate on water issues. The President's commitment on these issues is ironclad. That's why last Tuesday, the President announced the creation of a new water subcabinet. It will be co-chaired by Administrator Wheeler and Interior Secretary David Bernhardt, and will include representation from DOE, as well as other agencies, in coordination with White House, including Chairman Neumayr. And that is also why the President initiated our DOE-led Water Security Grand Challenge. It's through collaboration between industry and our national labs, we are harnessing innovation to meet the need for safe, secure, and affordable water. Now, in line with this commitment, I am pleased to make 2 announcements today. First, I'd like to announce the opening of what we call the Develop competition, which is the second competition in our Ocean Observing Prize, issued jointly between the Department of Energy and NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, under the leadership of Admiral Gallaudet. This competition asks problem solvers to develop technologies to help us better map, monitor, and understand the ocean so we can do things like better forecast hurricanes. Now, this competition offers $2.4 million in cash prizes, access to testing in tanks and at sea, as well as in-kind support. Second, I'm announcing the 19 quarterfinalists that we called from 160 competitors for the $9 million Solar Desalination Prize. The goal is to develop systems that use solar thermal energy to produce clean water from salt water for municipal, agricultural, and industrial use. Representing universities, private industry, and national labs, the quarterfinalists will receive $50,000 in cash prizes and advance to the second contest of the competition. So once again, let me congratulate Administrator Wheeler on completing the U.S. federal strategy for addressing the global issue of marine litter, and thank my administration colleagues for their pivotal role in today's event and for their continued commitment to making our water clean and available for multiple uses. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Deputy Secretary Menezes. I'd like now to introduce Rear Admiral Timothy Gallaudet, one of our partners in the marine debris.
Thank you, Florida Atlantic University, for hosting us here on this great event. Dr. Kelly, your magnificent host, and thank you, Administrator Wheeler, for inviting me to be part of this great federal team with local partners and private sector partners as well to announce this terrific federal strategy to address the global issue of marine litter. And actually, this is really part of a string of really incredible ocean initiatives that the Trump administration has put forward over the last few years, and they include the National Ocean Policy that established the Ocean Policy Committee that Chairman Neumayr discussed, as well as the Science and Technology for the Future, or the Ocean Decadal Vision, that the Office of Science and Technology Policy released 2 years ago. And in addition, there are a number of recent events which we think are really proud to speak of, and that includes a recent executive order signed by the President to advance American seafood competitiveness and economic growth, as well as before that, a presidential memorandum for advancing and mapping and exploring the U.S. exclusive economic zone. So this is just one in a series of efforts to advance America's oceans and keep them healthy, safe, clean, in support of our economy, our well-being, and our national security. And so with respect to marine litter, NOAA has been a leading agency in an area that we more commonly call marine debris. And we have been doing this since 2006 when the Marine Debris Act was signed into law. And this act put us in charge of the Interagency Marine Debris Coordinating Committee. And so what you see here today is really a culmination of that in a whole-of-government approach to clean up our oceans. And so in this committee and in this act, it authorizes NOAA to work with our federal partners as well as tribes, state, local entities, the private sector, and non-governmental organizations, as well as academia. And so here you see that in play today. Under this Marine Debris Act, NOAA is also working to advance our international engagement. And a great example of that is the fact that we have hosted the International Marine Debris Conference for the last 12 years or so. There's been 6 of them. Most recently, in San Diego, California in 2018, where we had 700 participants and representing 54 countries. And so this has all been in the effort that Administrator Wheeler talked about getting the international community on board and us showing American leadership in this important area, especially Southeast Asia. Now, Administrator Wheeler also talked about the fact that the President signed the Save Our Seas Act, and the great thing about this act is it reauthorizes NOAA's marine debris program. And so there's that, and then it was this act that actually added the provisions to expand our international engagement to build capacity for waste management. So really the culmination of a number of just terrific areas here. And so as we move forward as an interagency body with our partners here, I want to point your attention to page 4 of this strategy, where the economic impacts are illustrated. And these are just examples. We picked 4 areas in this study, and really when you think about what's happening across all our coasts, I mean, the numbers are huge. Just in these 4 areas, you're seeing, the impact of not cleaning and cleaning on the order of hundreds of millions of dollars, tens of thousands of jobs. And so this is a really important issue for our country and our oceans. And so that's one reason. And then, if you look at some of the examples, they also sort of highlight why this is important. Since we've been doing this, NOAA has has cleaned up 22,500 metric tons of waste in our oceans. Now think about that. So that's the good work we have ahead of us. We've accomplished a lot. We have more to go. And some of that has used about $24 million of funding. So Administrator Wheeler talked about the great investments the EPA has made, and NOAA has been matching and doing the same. And so let me just kind of really just wrap up here and say that we're really proud to be part of this, this team effort of federal and state, local, and academic partners. And we're also excited because this really is the way ahead for our oceans, advancing our oceans to be clean and healthy because they're the foundation of our economic prosperity and security today and going forward in the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral Gallaudet. I'd like now to introduce Dr. Mike Witt. Dr. Witt is representing the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. He's also from the Dow Chemical Company and one of our non-governmental partners.
Thank you, Chad, and good afternoon. Dr. Kelly, Administrator Wheeler, Chairman Neumayr, Deputy Secretary Menezes, Admiral Gallaudet, Congressman Mast, and distinguished guests. Thank you for taking this opportunity to highlight the importance and the important role in our collaboration to address one of society's greatest challenges, which is marine litter and the increasing incidence of plastic waste in the environment. My name is Mike Witt, and I lead plastic sustainability at Dow, where I've spent my entire career over 2 decades focused on sustainable innovation. Much of my focus over the past few years has been on plastic sustainability. Plastic, as was mentioned before, plastic is an indispensable material for the world's consumers and a vital part of a resource-efficient future. We know that lightweight plastic provides growing populations around the world with greater access to fresh foods, safer drinking water, and to medicines. It translates directly to lower environmental cost in the supply chain, plus a better, more affordable, and healthier quality of life for those who call this country home and the billions around the world. At the same time, we are facing an unacceptable consequence. Too much plastic is lost to waste, and it's entering our oceans, clogging up rivers, and polluting our natural environment. The presence of marine litter has significantly impacted, and it has been hurting tourism and fishing to the tune of over $260 billion a year. In the industry I come from, we lose over $120 billion due to the value of plastic packaging material not being recovered. This cannot continue, which is why we are driving action to solve this global challenge. Just over 2 years ago, I was party to a discussion where the concept of the Alliance to End Plastic Waste was first discussed. As one of the founding members of the Alliance, we joined with other plastics producers, brand owners, retailers, recyclers, and waste haulers to come together to accelerate and to eliminate plastic waste in the environment. With some key strategic input from the American Chemistry Council, we developed and are now implementing a $1.5 billion 4-part strategy to end plastic waste. The 4 pillars of the Alliance strategy are fully consistent with the strategy outlined in the Marine Litter Handbook, and as was just mentioned a few minutes ago. Specifically, we will build capacity through our priority focus on infrastructure. We will incentivize recycling and promote research and development through our innovation pillar. And we continue to promote marine litter removal through our global efforts focused on cleanup. And where we're at now, we're almost 2 years into this 5-year commitment. Well, we have 57 members and supporters, and that's up from the 16 that we announced in January of 2019. We are engaged in 35 cities and 10 countries where we've launched 25 projects. Included in some of these projects are our successful launch in Jembrana, Indonesia, where we have shown a sustainable business model for waste management infrastructure and are now reaching out to over 30 communities across that country. We are working to stand up zero plastic waste cities with the Grameen Creative Lab in India. We have advanced a Closing the Loop project with the Assace Foundation in Ghana. Finally, we have kicked off the Altogether Global Cleanup, where thousands of employees and community members around the world have focused on a collective effort to remove, and I mean literally remove, tons of marine litter from the environment. In addition to our leadership within the Alliance, we are working with the American Chemistry Council and its membership to drive the creation of a circular economy. We're supporting policy and legislative efforts that incentivize circular solutions. We're supporting a national recycling framework to integrate waste management systems and improve market demand for recycled materials. We are supporting the development of new markets for recycled content, demonstrating the value that recycled materials can have and should have in our economy. In summary, the global challenge takes leadership to coordinate a diverse collaboration across business, academia, NGOs, and especially forward-looking governments. We appreciate the leadership shown by this administration, in particular you and your team, Administrator Wheeler. We see broad support for Save Our Seas 2.0, having passed both the Senate and the House already. We realize there's just a little bit going on in Washington, D.C. right now with a Supreme Court nomination and an election coming up in just over 2 weeks. We appreciate your continued leadership in working with Republicans and Democrats to get this to the President's desk for signature. This is a solvable issue, and we are committed to realizing a future that is free of marine litter. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Witt. Now it's my honor to, we've already talked about the federal partnership, the private partnership, academia, and when we say federal, it's not just the executive branch, but we're honored to have Congressman Brian Mast from the legislative branch. Sir.
I sat down and just like habit, popped it open and took a drink of it because I was thirsty. It's too easy. There are places for use for plastics, it's absolutely true. But there are places where we can all do better. And if something is a priority for our government, it has to first be a priority of we the people. A government of the people, by the people, for the people. We the people have to want that to be a priority. And that's one of the things that I think is most important. We have to demonstrate, we have to find ways to demonstrate in our day-to-day lives that we are going to make a difference in our own personal behavior. I think it's the most important research and development that we can go out there and do on this issue, is address how we tackle this in our own personal lives. If my wife and I simply choose to drink differently each day of our lives, we're probably taking at least 8 of these out of the systems for each one of us every single day. And that's just my wife and I. And we look to these other countries that are out there dumping crap in the water. Not just crap, physical crap, human crap, but also garbage. We need to be hard-nosed with them. We need to stand up to them. China, Indonesia, Vietnam, you pick the country out there. If they're dumping something in the water, we got to let them know it's not going to be tolerated. We're not going to support them. We're going to find ways to cut some of the business that's going on there if that's what's going to happen, not just because we don't want it to wash up onto our shores here in the United States of America, but because it affects everybody globally. Secretary Wheeler, you spoke about it. We are interconnected through our waterways, and this is something that we can work to fix. We can work to fix it by being leaders and taking charge, leading against those countries that are the biggest polluters of marine waste in this area. And we can be leaders by what we ask of our communities and the way that they go out there and behave, each of themselves as individuals. And I believe that we can make a difference on this front. It's something that I believe fully matters to every person in this room. I believe that to my core. And I know it for many of you that I know personally. But it takes a very hard effort to go out there and ask people to make a difference in their own lives and ask the leaders of other countries to stop dumping crap in our water. And that's it.
Thank you, Congressman Mast. I'd like to reintroduce Administrator Wheeler for closing remarks, please.
Thank you again, Chad, and if it's all right, I'll just stay seated here. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you for those words. I want to thank all the members of the federal family, and again, the university for hosting us. I can't overemphasize the importance of this strategy document. As you heard today, just from EPA, Department of Energy, and NOAA, the activities that have been going on for a number of years, in some cases, on trying to address marine litter in our oceans. But this is the first time the entire federal family has come together to work on a strategy document to produce a strategy document that outlines the strategy that we will be taking going forward into the future to solve this global problem. It's the work of all of our agencies and departments with the leadership of the White House, and I really appreciate Mary Neumayr being here today to represent the White House, that's going to get this accomplished. But it's not just the federal government. It's also working with state and local governments, as all of our agencies do. It's working with the private sector. It's working with the NGO community. And it's working with leading international research universities. It is on. It's working with leading international research universities to lead the way. This is a global problem. Looking at as I mentioned in my remarks, the 5 largest contributors to marine waste are 5 Asian countries. When you look at the percentage of contribution to the global problem, the United States is just ranked number 20, with the first 5 producing over 50% of the waste in the oceans. So we have to work beyond our borders, and that's what we all are doing together. And we will be more successful in the future now that we are all working cohesively together on one strategy and one initiative. Before I end it and ask the press if they have any questions, let me ask if Dr. Sullivan or Dr. Mincer would like to say anything on behalf of their research or the university.
Thank you, Administrator Wheeler. I'm very happy that you chose to come to FAU to make this announcement about the federal strategy to deal with marine litter and marine plastics, which, as an oceanographer, it's something that we all can agree is a very important problem. And I just hope in the future that FAU and the other universities in the country can work with the EPA and the other agencies to tackle this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Mincer, would you like to?
Yeah, you bet. Thank you for this, and it's something that we all can agree on. And that's nice to see. And since the early 70s, oceanographers have been reporting plastics in the oceans, and it's time that this all has happened, and it's really terrific to see. It's heartening to see this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And with that, if there's anybody from the press that would like to ask any questions? Yes, sir.
Administrator Will, we had talked last week on
Yes.
the telephone, and I can appreciate that the Asian nations are doing most of the pollution, but I believe that we had said a lot of what we see here in the 3-county area of Palm Beach County and Broward County and Miami-Dade does not come from Asia, but it's domestic. I'm wondering, correct me if I'm wrong on that, number one, and I'm wondering, number two, what have we done to target those sources of domestic plastic litter? And I would guess that those 3 sources would be, fishermen, beachgoers, and boaters, is my guess. But what are we doing to address those?
I didn't mean to say that majority of it here is domestic, but the majority of the waste that comes from the 5 Asian countries ends up on our west coast. So we do get litter on the East Coast from other countries as well, not just from those 5 Asian nations. But we do have litter that comes from the United States. We have litter that comes from, there is certainly waste that comes from the fishing industry. Not necessarily the U.S. fishing industry, but the fishing industry that ends up in the oceans as well. So there is a lot that we can do and that we are doing here in the U.S., here in Florida. I mentioned some of the grant programs that we have just from EPA's perspective, and just in recent weeks, such as the Choctaw tribe in Mississippi from preventing waste going from a river on their tribal lands into the Gulf of Mexico. And we are, for the first time as an agency, focusing on removing litter in the Great Lakes. So we are doing more and more. A lot of this is public education. The Congressman is right, considering, for us to consider our own personal uses of waste. But if we were recycling 100% of the materials, which we could, or a lot better than we do now, it would take away a lot of the problems that we have. And this new facility that's being built in Erie, Pennsylvania, is going to go a long way to recycling plastic. You know, again, this strategy captures a lot of what each of our agencies and departments are doing individually. And one of the other roles at EPA is on the recycling process. And we held the first ever recycling summit 2 years ago at EPA headquarters. We had over 100 participants. Last year, we had to double the size of the room because of the people who wanted to participate in our recycling summit. And last year, we also held a recycling workshop, or a recycling trade fair. We had over 50 different booths at the trade fair. This year, we're going to have the recycling trade fair, a virtual trade fair. My staff tells me that it will operate fine and that there's no need for me to be concerned on my part. I've not participated in one of those yet, but I'm looking forward to that. And we'll actually have over 30 different participants have already signed up to have their booths at the trade fair. And the number of participants at our recycling summit is going to be even larger than last year. So we are working across the entire recycling value chain, from the producers of the raw materials through the manufacturers, the product, the people who take the products and package them into different packages, to the waste stream collectors, to the recycle collectors, to the end of the use product users who take the recycled material and turn it into useful products. We're working across the entire recycling value chain to try to decrease the amount of materials that go into the waste stream or go into the water bodies. And that is one of the roles of EPA. But together, all of the federal family, the agencies and departments, are working to try to improve that. Would any of my colleagues like to add anything?
Yes, thank you, Administrator Wheeler. You asked great questions, and indeed, while we use the word recycling, it encompasses many of the characteristics that Administrator Wheeler said. In the world of energy, for example, on the West Coast, we have there's an existing power plant that recycles, that captures waste in waters, in the ocean, and it uses that waste to generate power for electricity. So when we were talking about some of these initiatives early, we realized that we could get together and collect this waste and use it for something positive, and that is to generate electricity. And certainly where a lot of the waste comes from, it is the area that needs electricity. So this is going to be an international effort when we develop these technologies that are cost effective, and we can push these technologies out so that we can go to those countries where the problem exists and turn it into a positive. That's one thing. You know, the other really exciting thing of getting all of our national laboratories and scientists involved in this is that part of the solution is going to be to actually biodegrade the plastics where they are. We have hydrocarbons throughout our waters. You can read the study that FAU just came out, right? So it's there. That molecule is floating around and everything. Well, you know, we've already developed bioorganisms that actually eat the hydrocarbons, so it's actually a positive thing. And these are the these are the exciting breakthrough technologies that we hope to accomplish by turning loose the ingenuity and creativity of our scientists, to address this problem. So those are a couple of the things that I would just like to add to this. The other point on this, and the Congressman made this point, a lot of the plastics are single-use products. So you use products, not all plastics are recyclable, and Dow has been a leader in recognizing that you can have multiple uses of a polymer, that's made. And so that brings the circular economy concept that Dow was talking about, that basically, we keep track of the molecules, the hydrocarbons that go into making this product and future products. So we're going to get away from the single-use plastics. So think about it. We're asking you to think about it in that holistic kind of way, and that's what having all the federal bodies here, represent today.
I would make a comment on this as well, just to say, when we talk about this in our backyard, we have a very close international neighbor, and that's Haiti. That is one of the worst ocean litter producers in our entire region, certainly for us here as Floridians, being in such close proximity. And that's one of the other places that we have to look internationally when we're looking at ocean litter as Floridians. It's one of the big places that we need to pay attention as well.
Right, and also for domestic sources, NOAA's program for marine debris, we do a lot of education and outreach. And so, for example, we've produced 12 marine debris response guides, and state and local partners to use, and they're really very complete documents and action plans. So the guides kind of to clean up marine debris. That's where the education and outreach comes in. A really good, I think, development this year was in 2020, just earlier, a few months ago, we were agreement, or U.S. Because to carry out projects in North America to remove and prevent marine debris. Mental harm problems that we're all here to discuss. So thank you.
Certainly.
Yeah, sure. My name's Rob Quinaris. I'm a guest of Congressman Mast. We've been working on ocean plastics through his office with Mission Resolve and Guy Harvey Ocean Foundation. And we actually, one of our partners set a record 103 tons of Pacific coast of plastic taken out. But I'd like to go with the educational part, especially the K through 12. Little self-serving. Guy Harvey Ocean Foundation has been working on the marine science virtual learning platform before COVID, and we now are launching it. We're working with Ocean First and also Discovery Education that has a worldwide reach of over 40 million kids. So if we can educate the K through 12 about the environment, the oceans, the turtles, the mangroves, and what the plastics are doing, I think that's where we can get the biggest bang for our bucks long term. So incentivizing some good K through 12, and we're there. We already have our first one-on-one, but education, I didn't really hear it come up today, but I think we get to these kids and they'll stop using these plastics. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And I've done some outreach with a number of the organizations, NGOs, on public education, and we're working with a number of them, and we're more than happy to work with you and your organization. Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the press? Well, if not, and in the interest of public education, it's really important for all Americans to know what we're doing together and the fact that we can solve this program together. So I do appreciate the press being here today to cover this. I want to thank again members of the federal family for being here, the university for your hospitality, and for the leading research that you're doing here at the university to help solve this problem, both here in Florida and around the world. I want to thank the Congressman again very much for being here. Thank you, sir. Thank you all for coming.